The prancing horse brand of exotic cars. There aren't that many automotive brands that have the same level of prestige and recognition as the Ferrari brand name. For decades now, this Ferrari name has been synonymous with luxury and exoticness of the highest levels. And for the longest time, it was just basically Ferrari and Lamborghini, that other most famous automotive brand name that's immediately associated with exoticism for most, and with whom they've also been two fiercely competitive brethren and homeland rivals with. But nowadays, the exotic cars game is more crowded than ever, with the likes of Bugatti and Koenigsegg, and Aston Martin and McLaren, and so on and so on. Then there are your even lesser-known producers and even more recent entrants in this exotics and super high-end auto space like Rimac and Zenvo. Well, I'm going to save the talk about all those other brands for another video, because the Ferrari brand is still here, still alive and well. And you can bet that this old Italian stallion still has plenty of kick left in it, even with all those other competitors who have entered this super niche automotive exotic space over the decades. And this entire video is going to be dedicated to this old legend and workhorse. See what I did there? Anyways, top 10 lists have always fascinated me and millions of others, and it's probably because of the nature of its limitations and constraints that actually make them that much more interesting and fascinating. So now it's this old famous legend's turn to get this channel's thoughts and top 10 treatment. So what's it going to be? With an 85 years history and dozens of models over those decades to choose from, if I could only have 10 models out of their entire history of dozens of offerings, which 10 would they be? Stick around to find out if any of your favorites made it to the list, and if there were any that were always going to be an obvious choice and a no surprise at all to you. It would really blow my mind if you honestly had absolutely none of my personal selections on your list. With all that said, let's jump right in with our usual number 10 spot to start. And who is going to start us out? Who is going to be the least of these 10 greatest of my personal all-time favorites from the super cool Ferrari brand automotives? Well, it's one that I'm quite sure most people have never even heard of, and it's even more rare and exclusive than the usual Ferrari offerings that are already very rare and exclusive to begin with. So which model is it that I've been hinting at? It's the Ferrari J50, a very unique and special Ferrari, exclusive to Japan, and built to celebrate 50 years of Ferrari's presence in the land of rising sun. And limited to just 10 examples. You can count them all on your two hands, because that's how few there are of them. To put that into perspective, there are nearly 500 units of the wildly popular and highly sought-after LaFerrari, and there's an estimated 15,000 Ferrari 488s ever produced across all variants. So yeah, less than a dozen J50s that exist in this world is super rare indeed. Oh, and the J50 was based on that 488, but just looks a lot better than its much more plentiful base model. So this J50 model definitely is a special Ferrari indeed, with a great look and an even greater story. And that's why it's here on this list at this number 10 spot. Continuing on, so who's going to be at this number 9 spot? Who is going to be the second worst of the 10 best, if you will? Although, this is a Ferrari's list, and it's hard to go wrong with any Ferrari, let alone your personal top 10 of them all. But you get the picture. So who's it going to be? Well, why don't we just go from one Ferrari 50 to another? Yep, at this number 9 spot is the world-famous Ferrari F50. Right away, someone must be thinking, how dare he put a flagship Ferrari this far down on his top 10 list? Well, at least I've never called a mongrel like Jeremy Clarkson did. And that was just one word amongst quite a few other choice words that he had for the F50. Anyways, the F50 is definitely not as iconic as their other flagship models, but it's still been popular enough for me to have one as a toy when I was just a little boy. But this F50 design was an evolution of the F40 and turning out to be inferior and less attractive than that mega popular and hit F40 design. Oh, and remember how I mentioned Jeremy Clarkson at the start of this 9th place reveal? Well, it turns out calling the F50 a mongrel might have actually been one of the nicer things that Clarkson has ever said about the F50. Because he also said about it that it was like having a washing machine that was full of bricks and running while also being strapped to your back at the same time. Or how about when he said that it was just straight up that it was a quote-unquote recipe for misery? Ouch! Well then, on that wonderful note, let's move on to our number 8 spot holder, shall we? So now, Who does have this list's 8th spot then? If placing the F50 at the number 9th spot wasn't sacrilegious enough for some people, what I am about to do at this 8th spot might just cause half of you to click away. Out with it then. Some of you are probably eagerly thinking, alrighty, here goes. We have at this number 8 spot, the F40. 10% of my audience probably just spit their coffee out at their computer screen in disbelief right now. Yep, the super famous and well-liked Ferrari F40 is almost completely at the bottom of my top 10 favorite Ferraris of all-time list. How dare I? What is with this super low placement of such a fan-favorite Ferrari? What is my issue with it? Out with it. Some of you must be thinking right now, easy Super F40 fanboys. Easy. Put back your pitchforks and tiki torches, and I'll tell you. So it all has to do with that insanely long and way too thin as well nose of its. That unattractive nose just stands out like a quote, unquote sore thumb a bit too much, and has always been a humongous detractor of the F40's looks for me. Everything else about the F40 is great. Even that big over-the-top wing of its. But that nose has always killed it for me, or as mentioned, took away too much from its overall appeal. And that's why it's here at the bottom 3 spots, and this is where it's going to remain. Continuing on, we've come upon Mr. Lucky number 7 once again on another top 10. So who is going to have this unique place on this particular and fairly unique list this time? It's going to be one of the most legendary and biggest icons ever, the Ferrari Testarossa. Because when people think of classic Ferraris, this is probably the car that comes to their mind first and most quickly. A bona fide poster car that was probably on a lot of kids' bedroom walls and their classroom folders as well is this timeless Ferrari Testarossa. And do you know which part about the Testarossa that is my favorite? It's that super unique, atypical, and massive side air scoop that has always been like no others. Or perhaps I should say that no other has ever been like it before or since. And like the horseshoe grill for your Bugattis or those bug eyes for your Porsches. It's been such an iconic feature of the Testarossa, and what has made it so memorable in its own unique and particular way. And here at lucky number 7 is where it's going to stay. Next up, of course, is our 6th spot. Oh, it's getting gooder now. So who owns this number 6 spot on such a unique list such as this? Because we had just arrived at the middle 2 spots of every top 10 list. And the lucky occupant of this number 6 situation is the Ferrari 348. Like the Testarossa, the 348 is another classic Ferrari and one of the cars of their middle decades that has really helped to cement their place amongst the exotic circles as a true and formidable contender, in my opinion. And also like the Testarossa, the 348 has aged very nicely and its looks have held up very well, with both still really having a gorgeous, elegant, and timeless look about them. But as you can clearly see, the 348's landing at this number 6 spot has had it outdoing the Testarossa by just 1 spot. So even though they are the same era and both being quite similarly great in so many ways, the 348 is clearly the winner, if there had to be one, by its higher position on this list. To put another way, if I was going on a date with a lovely lady and I had to choose between the Testarossa or the 348, I am going to take. So let's head on over to our next placeholder and who is going to be occupying the spot. The 348 outdid the Testarossa, which was no small task or feat. So who was able to outdo the 348 then? Why, it's none other than the gorgeous and spectacular Ferrari 430. The 430's look is an evolution of the 360 that came before it, and it's generally similar in shape and design, but somehow manages to pull it being different and distinct enough to really be its own thing. But the 360 is quite a bit more elegant and prettier looking, while the 430 is quite a bit more athletic and aggressive looking. So if you had to choose, which one would you take? The 360 or 430? I guess it all comes down to personal preferences and taste then. But the 430 has made it to this list, and the 360 didn't, or at least hasn't yet. But if it was on this list, we start at the bottom and are already at this number 5 spot. And the only way from here is up, so that means the 360 has got to be, yep, you guessed it, the 360 is at our number 4 spot. And as mentioned, even though they are similar in their general size and overall look, At the same time, though, they're still different and distinct enough from one another to definitely be their own things. But it is now obvious which I prefer over the other, though. But the $64 million question is why? Well, because as alluded to earlier, the 360 is just a bit more elegant and attractive than 430. That's why. Even if it still did come before the 430. And on a list of some of the most beautiful cars in all of history, the one that has it a little more than the other is going to be the one who ranks up just a little bit higher than the other. Of course. So the 360 landed in the upper half, but came just one step short of being amongst the top 3 finishers of this list, unfortunately for it. Well, we finally made it to the top 3 of a list that was already made up of the best to start with. So who are going to be the best of the best then? With these final 3 spots. Let's keep climbing even higher on this unique mountain to find out. At our number 3 spot, and our bronze medal finisher is the Ferrari F80. Yes, I'm just going to spoil it, since we only have 2 more to go anyways. The F80 is our newest Ferrari on this list, and perhaps their boxiest one ever too, after decades of having mostly rounded and curvaceous-looking cars for basically all of their models. Though it's not as gorgeous as the ones at the number 1 and 2 spots, of course, it's still got plenty going for it with its looks. Not to mention its technological advantages too, for simply being one of their latest creations out there right now. So if you've always preferred or wanted to box your Ferrari, well, they must have read your mind, because you sure have one now. But most importantly of all, it's still thoroughly worthy of being called a flagship Ferrari, in my opinion, but it's just not as impressively designed as our final 2, which are at the silver medalist position of this unique and particular top 10 list is the Ferrari Enzo. The Enzo is a Ferrari that is so great and so amazingly looking and impressively designed that they named it after their own founder. Now that is no small act or thing to do. And when it comes to the Enzo's look itself, if there was ever an appropriate time to break out that over-the-top term, well, this is it with this car's design. Because, wow, one look at the Enzo and that is immediately what my mind is thinking. In fact, one well-known automotive reviewer described it as looking like some spaceship. I couldn't agree more. But allow me to take it even one step further and say that it actually looks like an alien spaceship from a faraway planet that's come to visit Earth. Because once again, wow, is its look and design so radical and out there. And those exact things are precisely why I'm so blown away and so impressed by it. So much so that I placed it at this number 2 spot on my top 10 favorite Ferraris of all time. But even though the Enzo is all that and then some, it still wasn't our number 1 or first place finisher of this list. Then who the heck can outdo such an extreme and out there supercar design and creation like the Ferrari Enzo? Why, it can only be the awesome 599? Nope. The interesting little Dino? Nope. How about the cool looking and pretty fascinating 812 Superfast? Still no. Then it's got to be that $70 million Ferrari 250 GTO, right? Still a definite no and never. I'm actually not really a fan of the 250 at all, to be quite honest, and to many people's shock and surprise. So then, it can only be the car who is supposed to be the definitive Ferrari, and the car whose name means just that. Yup, you've definitely figured it out by now. My personal favorite and the best-looking Ferrari of all time is the Ferrari LaFerrari. What more is there to say about it? It's all already in the name. I guess its name is a lot like that one other super iconic and world-renowned classic supercar, the Lamborghini Countach, whose name basically means wow. Because if I remember correctly, when someone at Lamborghini first saw the Countach, they were so blown away by its design that they just exclaimed wow, and it stuck, and that's what it's come to be known by. But getting back to the LaFerrari's design, if you ask me, I'd say it's been an evolution of the Enzo's design, and like a great movie sequel. It's even better than the first. I didn't think that they could outdo the Enzo, but of course they did. When I first laid eyes on a Ferrari Enzo, I thought, this is it, it can't get any better than this insanely awesome design. But it certainly has, and they absolutely blew me away with the LaFerrari's design when it was first unveiled to the world some 10 years ago. And after just one look at this super stunning and super sexy flagship Ferrari's design, even though I've always thought that LaFerrari name was lame, it wasn't hard for me to see why they decided to call it that, which means the Ferrari, or that it's meant to be the definitive Ferrari. Well, It looks like that LaFerrari name continues to hold true because it is the top Ferrari of this list and is the king of all these other kings on this Ferrari mountain. So, which one of your personal favorites made the list? I'll be very shocked and surprised if anyone has a list that does not have a single one of my selections on theirs. Go ahead and drop it in the comment section down below, and thanks for joining me on this one. Until the next time.